Do you remember, or maybe some of you still do this, I don't do this anymore, where when you were a kid, you just go outside and play all day long, you would just never come in? Yeah? Do you still do that? I don't do it. Yeah, you do. I don't do it anymore. Like, you just go off with no intention. You're just outside wandering around. Like, we had these rhododendron bushes, and that would become my house. But we also lived on a golf course, or not on a golf course, but on the 8th hole of a golf course. And I lived in Cleveland, so it was snowing half the time. So, that would be my extended playground. And I never thought to be afraid or nervous. I'd be tromping around in the snow. And one time I fell through the water and I came up. Never worried about it. I was never worried about dying or someone attacking me. Or I was just out all the time. Wasn't that fun? And you just feel, and the smell of grass, and I know the different smells of the seasons because you're so attuned to everything. And it wasn't like an obstacle to get over. Like winter later became an obstacle for me to get through. But when I was a kid, it was just something to enjoy. Like it was just all nature was there to enjoy. I think that's what we still want in our relationship with the planet, is not where it's just about our duty to it, like what we need to do to make it better, but we want to be in relationship with it in a joyful and delightful way. What I've noticed, however, is that when we talk about our relationship with the planet, there's a part of us that should feel like sinners. You know, I feel like in some ways, I'm sorry if this sounds extreme, but that's sometimes the energy that I feel, which is, we've taken from the church and the religion, you are sinners and you're going to go to hell if you don't do this. I sometimes feel like that's moved into the whole environmental world. You are sinners. Look what you've done to the planet. Look what we've done. Us humans, we're horrible people. We've beaten up this planet. We've been disrespectful of it, and now we're paying the price. And if we don't change our ways, we're going to go to hell. Earth's going to fall apart, and we're all going to die. And it has that intensity of blame and shame and fear, and that we better change now, or everything's going to come to a disaster. And I find I react to that. I'm just like, well, that does not make me want to take care of the earth. It makes, unless I'm afraid. It's only out of fear that you're trying to motivate me, and you're blaming me. The sinner thing, and I find that doesn't feel good. It doesn't make me want to go out and say yes to the environment, to the world, or to the planet. It doesn't make me fall in love with the planet the way it did when I was a kid and wanted to just go out and play all day in the grass and the trees. And so I was thinking, what's a healthy relationship with the planet? So in our teaching, we have the difference between facts and truth. We have facts, which are the temporary, like if you get sick, that's a fact. But the truth of my being is that I'm always whole, perfect, and complete. So do you understand? So the fact can be temporary. It's not permanent. But we want to acknowledge, we don't want to pretend that I'm not sick, but it's temporary. The absolute truth is that I'm always healthy, whole, perfect, and complete. The God being of me is complete. So the place we want to practice from is the recognition that love isn't something that comes and goes. It's not a human quality that we make happen. We don't make love happen. We don't make ourselves be loving human beings. In fact, I think the thing that strikes me the most, and has continued to, is how small my human love is. Whenever I try to love from Harriet, it has all my limitations in it. The only way I can know true and deep and profound love is when I get in tune and alignment with God's love. If I spend a lot of time immersed in that God energy and that love energy, and then I go out into the world, it's an entirely different experience. It's not myself separate, trying to love you separate. It's just the love already exists, and I'm aligning myself with that love that already exists. And to me, that's where we start to move into from relationship based on you should. So whether it's relationship to the planet, to other people, as a spiritual being, you should be nice, or you should be kind, because that's what good people do. It's because we automatically want to, because we start aligning ourselves with it. I think humanly we do, there's no question we have inferior and superior. So there's people in the planet who are completely ignorant and do abuse the planet. But then there's also, so that's one end, and the other hand is to feel better than everybody, self-righteousness. Just like in those old-timey churches, the people are like, I'm pure and I'm good and I look my nose down at you sinners. You know, that self-righteous feeling that some people would have in church. I think we have that with the planet. I eat only organic. I only eat buy the right clothes, go to the right stores, you know, and there can be a self-righteousness because that's what human beings do. We have this inferior, superior, and the whole degrees in between. So there's times where we want to feel better actually to compensate for feeling inferior. And it's the ego goes back and forth. If you watch your ego throughout the day, sometimes I'm not enough, I stink, I'm horrible. Oh, I'm so much better than them, though. You know? And it's like we have to do that to feel better about the not feeling. And we do this up and down thing. And I've been with, like, how do you, the only way to break, first of all, it's going to be there. But to break the cycle, it's like there's no win. Feeling inferior or superior, there's no place to ever get to the healing. The healing comes when you go beneath it to that underneath love. When you see that there's only one power and one presence, and that includes all of me that feels inferior. It includes all of me that feels like I'm better than people, and it's more than that. So it includes my whole spectrum, and not just me, but collectively, humanly, for all the people who are in fear, all the people who are not enough, to all along the line to people who feel better than everybody. It includes everything. There's nothing excluded. That's the place where the healing happens. When I worked at the psychiatric hospital, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that the reason why I was there was to serve God. I was immersed in this concept of oneness, and I would have never even thought of working at the psychiatric hospital. It was in that surrender that I was led to work there. And when I first started working there, I did feel separation. It was hard. They were very unhealthy. I'm the healthy one. Their energy was very dense. Mine felt better. And it was hard at first to be there because I felt the separation. But I knew God put me there. I knew that the only reason why I was on this earth at that moment was to be of service. So I kept saying one power, one presence, that the person who I'm with is whole, perfect, and complete. I'm whole, perfect, and complete. There's no separation. And suddenly all that separation, me versus them, started to dissolve. So when I talk about that I used to sing or be silly while I worked in the hospital and be happy, it wasn't put on. I wasn't trying to compensate for, they're so depressed, so I'm going to be happy. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was feeling genuine joy and delight to be with my sisters and brothers, and I got to be with them as they were naked in their stories, and that they would share them with me, and that I got to resonate and be with that in oneness, that I didn't feel like I was better. I felt like I was one with them in that story. And so the delight in our relationships is when we stop separating ourselves as better or less than and start saying, I am completely one with you. There was a woman there when I remember showing up for the shift, and her whole energy was, stay away from me. Don't come near me. And I picked up on that energy really fast, and I was ready to stay away from her. Okay, I hear you, I'll stay away. But she was assigned to me, as God would have it. And so I had to go talk with her, and I was actually nervous to talk with her because she really had that huge wall around her. And I started to talk with her, and I heard her story. You know, and some of these stories, woof. In fact, I was just thinking about not her story, but there were many stories that were so bad I didn't believe them, and I feel badly about that now because I thought nobody could be that cruel to another human being. That has to be made up. And now all these years later, I'm like, no, they were telling the truth. Like I'm realizing that sometimes it's hurtful and not abusive, but for me not to believe someone, like I feel like I did them a disservice. I do my prayer work to ask for forgiveness because it was too hard to believe that some of these stories. And this particular story, one of them was her dad would put her naked and wrap her up against a tree. You know, and I'm not going to go on, but it was a horrible story. You know, and she started sharing me this story. And as I got to know her, she was a writer, and she didn't write angry. She wrote such beautiful words, and I would read it, and I'm just looking at her story and who she became, and all she does is open my heart. I just felt such love with her. And for 1 second to think that I could be better than such a beautiful human being, or I could put a wall up or think, it's just, it's when we really let someone into our heart and know that there is no separation, that every human being is beautiful. We don't know people's stories. We don't know what's going on with them. But when we really hear and see who they are, it's a blessing. I just felt so blessed. And it shifted to when I got on the unit, she was the first person I wanted to see. She was the person I couldn't wait to see how she was doing today. I became totally attracted to being with her and her who she was. She opened herself to me. That's what happens when we start seeing people and life from a place of oneness and not separation. The things start to open up and we start to see and to feel deeper and more connected. Our whole life is then about service. When we feel our oneness, we end with where we started. It always goes back to our relationship with God. We cannot see people for who they really are if we don't connect with our own connection with God and our own self. We do the work knowing the presence within us, knowing the God within us, and then we can see it out there. We return and we return. And when we get to those places of oneness, then we realize all our life is about service. Reverend Michael tells a great story where he and Ricky were traveling, and they were traveling internationally, and they didn't know if they had enough time to make their connection. And so with the customs and everything else, and they were talking about it on the plane, and they just made the decision that, yes, it was going to work. They didn't know how, but they were going to make it. So they get off the plane, and this sky cap comes up and says, out of no place and nowhere, your service comes. And which is something Reverend Michael said, something like that on The Secret. And he came up, he said, what do you need? So he took them on the sky cap and helped them get through customs rules. They didn't have to stand in any lines, and they made it no problem. And Reverend Michael said, I just love this is beautiful. He turned around, and he saw the same sky cap, and he was with a mother and a child that was in a chair. And he was talking to the mother, said, can I pray for this little girl? And he put his hand on the little girl and started praying for her. And as Reverend Michael said, he wasn't a sky cap. He was only there to serve God. The sky cap was this role that he was playing, but he just knew that what he was here was to serve. And not serve from a place to fix somebody. Not serve because I'm healthy and I have something to give you. I have something you don't have. Service is I come from the place of we are one, and I'm just here to listen, to share whatever is already true, to start speaking it out, to calling it forth. The more we know that, the service doesn't become a depletion but energizing and vital. We get excited about it. We want to move towards it. It's not, I think when we come from service from separation is when we get depleted. So I talk a lot about my time in the psychiatric hospital because when I was giving service there, I was so clear that I was serving God, that God put me in that job. I never even, it wasn't until today that it never once dawned on me how the administration saw me or if they thought I was a good employee. I was so clear I was there for God, and I didn't think, did they think I was a good employee? I was just only trying to do what God wanted me to do. I knew that's why I was there. But in my previous jobs, I also did service. But I don't talk about them as much because I was coming from a different place. I was coming from me going to help them. So I worked in a juvenile delinquent halfway home for 2 years. First as a volunteer, and then I became paid staff. But that was definitely from the position. This was before I surrendered my life to the one power and I was going to help them. I was the healthy one. I came from a good family. They had all bad families. They had the rough life, and I was going to fix them. I was coming to help them. I had something that I could give them. And, the intentions were good. I wanted to be a good citizen. But it still was coming from separation. It was still coming from, you are over there and I'm over here, and if you're lucky, I'll help you. It wasn't arrogance. I just thought that's what I thought. That's what you do. And it's also very outcome oriented. Like I wanted to see an outcome, like I wanted to fix them, and I was looking for an outcome. And after 2 years, I was seeing that they were still had violence in them. That some of them, one of them they left and hurt somebody, and that was you're doing all this stuff, you're trying to listen, and they still behave badly, and because you're going for effect. When you're coming from oneness, you're not coming for effect. You're not trying to get a result because you're already seeing them as whole, perfect, and complete. I'm not coming in from a separation. I'm here to fix you. I am intending to see that you're already fixed. You're already on one level of your being. You're whole, perfect, and complete. And we as God, I'm meeting you God to God. And from that place, out of no place and nowhere, the tools, the need, whatever is needed to support that to happen, start to show up. But it comes from seeing the truth, the wholeness and the perfection, the absolute truth, not the temporary facts. Am I talking to someone from the place of the temporary facts of the situation, or am I talking to them from the absolute truth? That doesn't mean we ignore the temporary facts. Many of them, I would say most of them, did need to have restrictions because they still were acting out. They had years and years and years of abusive behavior. It wasn't going to change in 6 months. But it can be done from a place of wholeness, that you're not a broken being. You're a whole, perfect, and complete being. So that's the shift that I had to make in service. My service was not to fix somebody, but to connect with them from a place of wholeness. And then whatever tools came forth from that place were exactly what was needed, and I had to take my hands off of the results. Some people, I felt immediate healing. Other people, it didn't. But that wasn't my business. My only business was to show up for God. So when we go to work, when you all go to work, you're there only for God. God is your employer. I used to actually I changed it, but I used to put under, who's your employer on Facebook, I put God. I was my employer. Because that's what you're there for. You can think that you're there for all these other reasons, but those are all secondary reasons. That doesn't mean it doesn't impact us, but we just keep going back to the fact that we're here for God. We're here to know the wholeness and the perfection in myself and the other person. And again, we go back to ourselves, because of myself, I cannot do this. I am limited. I am humanly, Harriet, the body mind is limited. So it's constantly connecting with the source. Relationship with source, relationship with yourself, relationship with others, relationship with your planet. So we go back to the planet. What if we were in relationship with the planet today, not from a place of we're the sinners? How awful, look how awful. We're been such horrible human beings. What if we allowed ourselves to forgive ourselves for whatever all the mistreatment, unconsciousness, or ignorance that we've placed on the earth? What if we actually allowed ourselves to be forgiven? What if we saw the planet, even though it still has the facts of our ignorance on it, that at its essence, at its core, it's whole, perfect, and complete? What if we started our relationship today with the planet as something that already is beautiful, that is already healed, that in some level we are in our wholeness, forgiven, from this place of forgiveness in a relationship with a beautiful planet that is whole, perfect, and complete. And from that relationship, the tools to bring about it in form, the healing, will come forth in gentleness, in exactly the right timing, and we don't have to beat ourselves up anymore about it. Isn't that an entirely different way to go through a healing relationship with this planet and with all life? And when we start moving from that place, that's when we start to feel the delight and the joy and the energy. Ginger, can you come up here a minute? Would you be willing to? Sure. I want to do a little exercise. See if this works. We'll see. I tried it with Julian. It worked. So face me right here. You have to look right at me. Okay, so I want you to put the blade of your hand on my shoulder. Okay, keep your arm straight.
More efforting more. And this time I was only focusing on what you told me to.
And it's effortless.
And it was less effort.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And that's sort of the physical feeling of what we want to be doing. We don't want to just be passively knowing love, to really actively cultivating, energetically, I am here to only see love. I am only, no matter what my job is, no matter what my relationships with people, my goal, my intention is to continually deepen in our wholeness and our perfection and our love. And so if there are obstacles, if there are problems, if there are challenges, those are temporary. They are there to become opportunities to know love greater, to know love more deeply, if I really believe that love is absolutely the absolute truth, that everything else is just facts, temporary facts, then to give myself to whatever that is so it shifts into love and shifts into wholeness. And that's what we're here for. That's what you'll find is when we have that clear direction, that's where the energy and the delight, we just wake up. Like I remember when I was working in the psych hospital, I couldn't wait to get there. Like, I could not wait to get to see how everyone was doing. I talked to everybody, and there in the summertime, people tended to feel better, and the sun was out, so the census would go down. So sometimes they would cancel shifts. I would be so bummed out because that means I couldn't go, and I didn't see them as patients anymore. I saw them as friends, and that it was, I guess the deepest feeling was I was in total joy. When we are in service to the one, we don't have an employer, we're not there to get a paycheck. All those things are great, but we're not there to please people. We're not even there to get people to like us. I never even actually thought about, do people like me? I didn't, because that's not where my mind was. My mind was, God put me here. I'm here to serve. I'm here to see one power and one presence. And what happened is I had lots of friends and I felt connected with everybody. When our intention is on God and not ourself or their self, me fixing them and how good am I at fixing them, we're all in ego. We're all in this whole paradigm of inferior, superior. We're going back and forth. But when we are in God, we are free, and when we are free, we can enjoy and delight in the relationships that are everywhere present in our life. You with me? Feels good. So this week, and I'm putting it out there, but it's also, in, up, out, everywhere.